Alice in Wonderland. Once upon a time, in a quiet English countryside, there lived a curious young girl named Alice. One golden afternoon, while sitting with her sister by the riverbank, Alice grew bored of the book her sister was reading. She longed for something more exciting, something that would spark her vivid imagination. As she pondered, she noticed a peculiar white rabbit in a waistcoat hurrying by. "Oh dear! Oh dear! I shall be late," the rabbit muttered, glancing at a pocket watch. Intrigued by the sight, Alice sprang to her feet and followed the rabbit. She chased him across the field until he disappeared down a large rabbit hole. Without hesitation, Alice crawled into the hole and found herself falling down a deep, dark tunnel. The fall seemed to last forever, but she was not frightened. Instead, she looked around curiously, noticing shelves with strange items and pictures on the walls. Finally, she landed gently on a bed of leaves in a dimly lit hallway. Alice stood up and saw the white rabbit disappearing through a small door at the end of the hallway. She tried to follow, but the door was too small for her to fit through. Frustrated, she noticed a glass table with a small bottle labeled "Drink Me." Curious, Alice took a sip, and to her astonishment, she began to shrink until she was just the right size to fit through the door. She stepped into a beautiful garden, filled with vibrant flowers and colorful mushrooms. As she wandered through the garden, she encountered a talking caterpillar sitting on a mushroom, smoking a hookah. The caterpillar greeted her with a languid "Who are you?" Alice, feeling rather small and uncertain, replied, "I hardly know, sir. I've changed so many times since this morning." The caterpillar offered Alice a piece of mushroom, explaining that one side would make her grow taller, and the other would make her shrink smaller. Grateful for the advice, Alice took to pieces and continued her journey, encountering a series of bizarre and enchanting characters. She met the Cheshire Cat, a grinning feline who could disappear and reappear at will. The Cheshire Cat gave Alice cryptic advice and pointed her toward the Mad Hatter and the March Hare's tea party. Curious, Alice decided to join them. The tea party was a chaotic affair, with the Mad Hatter, the March Hare, and the Dormouse engaging in nonsensical conversations and switching places at the table. Alice found their antics both amusing and bewildering, but she couldn't stay long, as she was still determined to find the white rabbit. Continuing her journey, Alice stumbled upon a beautiful garden, where the Queen of Hearts was playing croquet with her court. The game was unlike any Alice had ever seen, with flamingos as mallets and hedgehogs as balls. The Queen was a formidable and temperamental figure, constantly shouting off with their heads at the slightest provocation. Despite the Queen's fearsome reputation, Alice bravely played the game and managed to avoid her wrath. During the game, she reunited with the White Rabbit, who was serving as the Queen's herald. The rabbit led Alice to a courtroom, where the Knave of Hearts was on trial for stealing the Queen's tarts. The trial was a farce, with absurd evidence and witnesses. Alice, now feeling more confident and assertive, stood up and declared the proceedings to be ridiculous. The Queen, infuriated by Alice's defiance, ordered her execution. "Off with her head," she screamed. As the Queen's guards approached, Alice felt a sudden sense of clarity, and remembered the pieces of mushroom she had kept. She quickly ate a piece, causing her to grow to an enormous size. The guards halted in their tracks, and Alice's newfound height gave her the courage to confront the Queen. "You're nothing but a pack of cards," Alice declared, swatting at the guards, who began to flutter around her like playing cards in the wind. The Queen's court erupted into chaos, and Alice felt herself being pulled away from the madness. She awoke to find herself back on the riverbank, her sister gently shaking her. "Alice, wake up," her sister said. "You've been dreaming." Alice sat up, rubbing her eyes and looking around. The world was as it had always been, but the memory of her adventures in Wonderland remained vivid. She smiled, realizing that her imagination had taken her on an extraordinary journey. From that day on, Alice cherished her adventure in Wonderland, finding joy in the whimsical and the unexpected. She never stopped being curious, always seeking out new experiences and adventures, both in her dreams and in the world around her. And so, Alice's journey through Wonderland became a beloved tale, a story of curiosity, bravery, and the magic that lies within the imagination. It reminded everyone that sometimes the most extraordinary adventures can be found when we dare to follow a white rabbit down a rabbit hole. The Nutcracker. Once upon a time, in a bustling town, during the magical season of Christmas, there lived a young girl named Clara. She was filled with the excitement and wonder that only Christmas could bring. Clara lived with her parents and her brother, Fritz, in a grand house that was beautifully decorated for the holidays. The centerpiece of their festive preparations was the magnificent Christmas tree adorned with twinkling lights and glittering ornaments. On Christmas Eve, the family hosted a grand party, inviting friends and family to join in the celebrations. Clara's godfather, Herr Drosselmeyer, was a toy maker and magician, known for his marvelous creations. He arrived at the party with a large box filled with gifts for the children. Among these gifts was a very special one for Clara, a beautifully crafted nutcracker in the shape of a soldier, wearing a splendid uniform and a tall hat. Clara was enchanted by the nutcracker and immediately fell in love with it. She thanked her godfather and held the nutcracker close, admiring its intricate details. Fritz, however, grew jealous of Clara's new toy and, in a moment of mischief, grabbed the nutcracker from her. As they tussled over it, the nutcracker fell to the floor and broke. Clara was devastated, but Herr Drosselmeyer comforted her, promising to fix the nutcracker. After the party ended and the guests had gone home, Clara placed the broken nutcracker under the Christmas tree and kissed it good night. She then went to bed, but sleep did not come easily. She was worried about her beloved nutcracker. As the clock struck midnight, Clara decided to check on it one more time. To her astonishment, the living room seemed to come alive with magic. The Christmas tree grew taller and taller, until it reached the ceiling, and the toys under the tree began to move. The nutcracker sprang to life, no longer broken, and he was now a full-sized soldier. Claire could hardly believe her eyes as she watched in wonder. Suddenly, an army of mice, led by the fearsome Mouse King, emerged from the shadows. The Mouse King was a dreadful creature with 7 heads, each wearing a tiny crown. He commanded his mouse soldiers to attack. The Nutcracker, seeing the danger, rallied the toy soldiers and led them into battle against the mice. Clara, though frightened, wanted to help. She noticed that the Mouse King was focused on the Nutcracker, ready to strike him down. In a brave moment, Clara took off her slipper and threw it at the Mouse King, hitting him squarely on one of his heads. The distraction gave the Nutcracker the opportunity he needed to strike the Mouse King, defeating him and sending the mice fleeing. With the Mouse King defeated, the Nutcracker turned to Clara and bowed. "Thank you, Clara," he said. "You have saved me." As he spoke, a magical transformation took place. The Nutcracker changed into a handsome prince, and the room around them transformed into a sparkling, wintry forest. The prince took Clara's hand and led her through the enchanted forest to the land of sweets. They were greeted by the sugar plum fairy and her court, who welcomed them with open arms. The prince recounted their brave battle against the Mouse King, and the Sugar Plum Fairy declared that there would be a grand celebration in their honor. Clara and the prince were treated to a dazzling display of dances and performances from all the inhabitants of the land of sweets. There were dances from around the world: Spanish chocolate, Arabian coffee, Chinese tea, and Russian candy canes. The flowers performed a beautiful waltz, and the dewdrop fairy danced with grace and elegance. The highlight of the celebration was the dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy, whose delicate movements captivated Clara. As the night wore on, Clara felt a sense of joy and wonder that she had never experienced before. The beauty and magic of the land of sweets filled her heart with happiness. But as the festivities came to an end, she felt a gentle tug pulling her back. She realized that it was time to return home. The prince took her hand once more and led her back through the enchanted forest. They arrived at the spot where their journey had begun, and the prince bowed deeply to Clara. "Thank you, Clara, for your bravery and kindness," he said. "I will never forget you." Clara blinked, and she found herself back in her living room, holding her beloved nutcracker. The Christmas tree was its normal size, and the room was quiet and still. She looked around, wondering if it had all been a dream, but the warmth in her heart told her that the magic had been real. The next morning, Clara shared her incredible adventure with her family. They listened with wonder and amusement, thinking it was just a fanciful story. But Herr Drosselmeyer smiled knowingly, for he understood the true magic of Christmas and the adventures that awaited those who believed. Clara kept the nutcracker close, cherishing it as a reminder of the magical night she had spent.